and welcome to the origin story and impact of the White Cane Safety Day with co-hosts Grace Ambrozakin and Kelvin Crosby.
Hey, everybody. It's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. My name is Kelvin Crosby.
And I am Dr. Grace Ambrozakin, and I feel welcome to be back with you, co-host of the podcast on Safe Toddles, the Pediatric Belt Cane. And this is a special month, October 15th, because it's the month of White Cane Day.
Yep.
And I wonder, Kel, if you know who inspired the fellow that eventually got us White Cane Day. Who do you think that was? And I'll give you a hint if you don't know.
See, I know who inspired the white cane itself, but I'm not sure exactly who inspired.
Who inspired the white cane?
So that was, what is his last name? Not Hen. Oh, it's coming to. It starts with an H.
Hoover?
Yeah.
No, but in fact, the white cane is something that we think started originally in France.
Interesting.
That people wanted to paint canes white to indicate that they were blind, but it's not something that we're 100% sure about. But it was sort of circulating the land that people who were in the field were starting to say, this would be a good idea. But actually, as a hint, I will tell you, she was a very famous woman who was deaf and blind.
Helen Keller.
Yay! 10 points for Kel. That's right. And the story that I understand, I've read the Lions Club has a history of the book, and as well as the biography and autobiographies written about and by Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan Macy. So in pulling all those sources together, where it starts is Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan are in California having the time of their lives in the sunshine. They're on movie sets. I mean, they're eating it up. They love it. And then they realize that they have to go to Cedar Point, Ohio in June to give a lecture to the Lions Club. And the place where they were invited to is a very lovely resort. Cedar Point has a huge amusement park nowadays, and I believe it's on a lake. So it's really a huge place. It's been around for the whole last century and continues on today to be a very big attraction. So it makes sense that a hotel is there. I visited it with my son. And so they said, all right, we'll go. Fine. So they made their way over to give their usual, spiel about why people should donate to American Foundation for the Blind and why they should continue to raise money in the Lions Club and do good works. And in the audience was another fellow named George Bonham. And George Bonham at that time in 1925 was like the assistant president or the co-president, one before the president of the Lions Club in Peoria, Illinois. And he was in the audience and was inspired by Helen Keller, who said, blind people don't want you to give them things. We don't want you to hand us the fish, right? Yep. We want in really purposeful, meaningful, creative ways to solve problems that allow us to do things for ourselves. Yep. So it was clearly a message that stuck with George as he left there, went back home, and became president of the Lions Club. And every day he would pass the courthouse and he would see Elmer Thomason. And Elmer Thomason is a blind newspaper vendor. And as you may know, that was one of the special funding projects that put blind people, they trained them. It was the BEP, now it's called the Business Enterprise Program. And it's a great program that one of the things they thought they could do was sell newspapers and other kinds of paraphernalia. And so that's what he was doing. And George noticed, of course, that he was blind because it's pretty obvious walking around. But he noticed also that when he went across the street, he had difficulty because cars didn't appear to yield to him or where he was doing or how he was doing. It's not clear on what it was, whether he knew how to cross at a lighted intersection. I mean, we're talking 1930s. So we're talking pre-VA. The VA came out with their methods for all of these things in 1945, and the white cane itself was elongated then. So this was before that. It was after the guide dog, but before the current white cane. So, yeah, so he goes back to his Lions Club and he says, we got to do something for this fellow. And I think he befriended him, and it's not clear how well he knew him before, but he inserted himself in his life. And George knew about the white cane, so he thought, let's paint one of these support canes, which is a short little support cane with a hook, white. And I'm going to give it to Elmer and see if that helps him. Now, Elmer already had, and I'll post this in our vlog version, a beautifully ornate staff that he was currently using. And I read on some websites that they said that he offered to paint that white. I don't know if that is true, but that is not what Lions Club says happened. Lions Club is adamant that they created the Lions Club cane. And if you're not familiar, it is a very short support cane. So it's to the hip. It has a hook. It's not a long cane. It's a short cane.
Yeah.
So he goes so excited over to Elmer and says, I'm going to fix this problem you have of getting the cars to yield to you by giving you this white cane. And he saw that it really didn't change traffic at all. So he said, well, why don't you wave it before you go? That didn't seem to help either. I imagine if I was a driver and some guy was waving a stick on the side of the road, if I noticed, I would probably speed up.
Or try to get away, right?
And like, there's a crazy guy on the side of the road. I don't know. But so then George Bonham went back to his fold of the Lions Club, and he said to his friends, what can we do? This isn't working. And the bright idea, let's put red on it too, because the colors of the stop sign are red and white. So that is what Lions Club says is how they chose to have a red base and a white top, red and white stop sign. And he went back out to Elmer with this new, it was same cane, same short hook support cane, white and red. Now, George races back to say it worked. We solved the problem. Let's get going. My suspicion, and this is only a suspicion, mind you, but being a person who teaches traffic, how to cross streets and how to interact with the cars, I'm just going to put it out there. I think George was with Elmer that day, and he also was signaling to cars to stop. So as Elmer was raising and lowering his red and white cane, so was George saying, all right, stop. And they stopped because that they understood. And so I can't confirm it, but it's my suspicion. Anyway, he goes racing back, as I said, to his club. And it became an international endeavor. They raised countless, they don't say how much money they raised, but they made these white canes in that mode and sent them around the world. Every school child, every adult, everyone who they could get these canes to, they sent them to.
Wow.
And reports came back very quickly, in fact. It's not working. It's not working as they had explained it would work, but it was too late. They had invested time and effort and all of this to get these canes out there. Now what? Well, we need to educate the drivers. Now, it's not maybe the cane needs to be fixed, which is, near and dear to my heart. No, we need to educate the drivers.
Yeah.
So let's put in every state a white cane law to tell drivers what to do when you see a white cane.
Yeah.
And so it took a long time, but every state now has a law about how that you have to yield for someone who uses a white cane and is crossing the street. Doesn't matter where they're crossing from. If they're in the street with a white cane, you are supposed to yield. Now, there's another rule that says pedestrians have the right of way, which is the same rule. Cars are supposed to stop for pedestrians, white cane or not. What also happened, unfortunately, is people with low vision or people for whatever reason who weren't using a cane got hit by a car. That law was used against them. You are visually impaired. You don't have your white cane.
Mm-hmm.
You took an unreasonable risk. And that's why it's your fault that you are now injured by this car who's supposed to stop for pedestrians. So it kind of had a problem there. But the White Cane Proclamation and White Cane Day, by 1964, every state had finally gotten all passed that they were going to protect the white cane user, educate drivers. And that's when Lyndon Johnson signed the first presidential proclamation for White Cane Safety Day.
Awesome. Well, and thank you for that story, because it's not really all that clear. Exactly. How did the red tip get on the bottom? Cause if you go to Europe, they have it wrapped around like a candy cane, saying this person is deaf-blind, not just blind. And I just find that, here in the U.S., and I think this is the interesting thing for everybody to understand, the white cane law only applies to here in the United States. It doesn't apply to other countries, and every country has their own interpretation of the white cane. And in some ways, would you say this is somewhat accurate, Grace, here, that a lot of countries don't recognize the red part, they recognize the whole white part?
Well, that's right. And they've done studies of cane recognition, mostly in America, but it's the action of using a cane regardless of color actually does signal to most drivers, which is who you usually test this on, because that's the flashpoint of safety.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's been said, well, you can use other colors, but it's this white cane that is the one that people think is the safest because of the law and because it's known. One of the downsides is that the first thing is that they didn't look at Elmer's staff. Elmer's staff is much longer than the one that George gave him. It's like it's like a regular size cane. So the part of the problem I have initially is they never asked these blind men who had developed a staff system, what's good, what's not good, how's that working, how's that not working, how can we incorporate what we are thinking is a good idea with what you're already doing, and maybe they could have maintained the length from the 30s. We know people have been recommending canes since 1871. With Levy wrote in his book, everybody should use a cane who's blind, even children. And so we hadn't even listened to that guy. So that's one thing. It's like, once again, it's an example of, did he really hear what Helen Keller was saying, or did he only hear what a sighted person hears, which is, how am I going to fix something if blind people can't possibly have any clue as to what would be good for them? Yeah. The second thing is this mantra in 1930s, starting then, when we only talked about blind people. There was no such thing as low vision. Nobody said that. Even people who were colorblind were considered blind. They could see, they just had color blindness. Like, they were part of the definition, which was blind. And someone could be blind and be able to read print, but not for far away. So it was very confusing for the modern day reader to understand, but that's the only word that was ever used, and it confused people because it'd be, well, why does this blind
Yeah.
person seem to be fine in terms
Yeah.
of this, and this blind person isn't? Well, that person's actually blind. So why is that a problem that we say white cane means blind? Because there's so many older adults and people who say, I'm not blind.
Yeah.
I don't need a white cane. White
Yeah.
cane is for the blind.
Yeah. And I think that you make a really good point there, and this is why we've changed from blind to visually impaired. And I think that's something that's really powerful in using the word. I mean, even in today's society, we don't, a lot of the general public doesn't recognize the understanding of visual impairment. Somebody that's doing a lot of social media and all that stuff, it gets, a lot of people are like, what does that mean, visual impairment? What does legal blindness mean? Like, they don't get it. And it's really taking the time and saying, hey, there's a spectrum of what blindness means.
It should be that blind is reserved for no vision.
Yeah.
Because that's what we mean when we say blind. And now we have to say totally blind.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with, they say, with linguists say, listen, society's going to use language. You just got to get on board with that and understand that's how you're communicating. So it's not so clear when it comes to cane use, what level of visual impairment needs cane. Now, I am clear. I know what it is, but I think we should add another phrase to our lexicon. We should talk about mobility visually impaired. We can be blind and mobility visually impaired. And those are the people that should have a cane all the time because their vision is such that they cannot detect obstacles visually.
Yeah.
And they're at risk for collisions, unavoidable, unwanted collisions.
And I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation in our next podcast, that I'll be introducing you guys to this concept and what this looks like from a parent, like if you're dealing with a child that has this challenge, and kind of looking at that and what that means. And I think it's going to be very interesting when we get there.
Because mobility impaired is a real thing too. And then I'm adding visually impaired, mobility visually impaired, which actually the spell check doesn't like, but I keep telling them, you're wrong, I'm right, just deal with it. The whole thing with what the Lions Club did, it actually delayed acceptance of the longer cane because the shorter cane not only didn't work, but, and then it also was, you had to be blind to use it. You know, yes, I want to celebrate blind. I would celebrate Helen Keller, who is deafblind. I will celebrate blind people for all of their achievements. I will celebrate Hoover for updating the cane and all that we've come through. But I wish we could get out of the 1940s and start pretending like we're in the, you know, the next century here and really celebrate the gifts of children by providing them with the safe mobility that allows them the confidence, the self-confidence to move about safely. And somebody told me the other day, I was at a conference. I have to share this story because it's so important for people to hear this. She grew up in a family. She had Stargardt's disease. She's a professional in the field. She grew up in a family. Everyone in the family genetically had a visual impairment, severe visual impairment, but she's not a cane user. So because of her ability, she doesn't have mobility visual impairment. That's fine. I don't mind. But she wanted to say that the child that I was outfitting with a Safe Toddles cane, who had remarkable progress in walking and independence and everything that you want for this child has been improved because of wearing his cane. She said, if he wears the cane, his other senses will not be able to be developed. And what I had to explain to her is, in fact, that is not the case. All of your senses have a better chance of becoming enhanced when you remove the sense of pain, when you remove the sense of fear, and you will reduce the stress of my unwanted bodily collisions and release the ability to hear about everything and look up from the floor and listen to the tactile feedback. it's a wonderful plethora of sensations that can reach your brain and you can really enhance your knowledge of once you are not mortally afraid of the next bruise, the next trip, the next fall. So
Mhm.
we really need to hear the value of the white cane, the value of safe mobility is to be celebrated on October 15.
You made some good points here, and I think what you and I are both are doing, me and I'll be doing my big launch on October 15th for the See Me cane, which is the lighted blind cane that allows you to be seen about 50 yards away
So
using a
great.
cane. And we finally have it collapsible. We
That's awesome.
yeah. So I'm super excited. So that will be in it. I'll be showing it all on Friday, October 15th. But going back to what we were just talking about is like even with the belt cane, like you've explained, the cane is a tool to enhance your senses,
That's right.
not to limit your senses. And and again, there's going to be the debate across the board. But this podcast is designed to be here for those that are ready to help their children, as well as those that are tired of the status quo of the traditional blind cane, because does it really do the work that it's supposed to do? If we think about the belt cane and we think about the semi cane, they both are doing something more than giving me information.
That's
It's
right.
telling people out there that I'm coming. The lighted blind cane is letting the people that are driving see the cane from 50 yards away. The belt cane is creating awareness for that individual to feel the safety of the environment as a toddler. I mean, those two things right there are huge. And that's the power of innovating the current cane of the white cane. Yes, it's a great tool. I use it every day.
That's right.
And and but at the same time, when I hit that curb, I always play those times. I'm like, is it safe yet? I can't hear the traffic correctly. So how do I know it's safe? And what tool do I have? Does the white cane really allow a driver to be seen? And I think celebrating White Cane Day, it's a celebration that we've gotten this far, and we now have law in force. But we're still, it's one of every three visiting per person that's going to be hit by a car in a lifetime.
So let's call it, we'll rename it Safe Mobility Day and try to inspire people
Mm-hmm.
first to invent, as you know, you have done and I have done, innovations
Mm-hmm.
on this tactile path warning. And secondly, I just want everyone to hear me. If the child, adult, older adult is not able to use the long cane within 45 minutes to 60 minutes, one step, one swipe, no prompts, then it isn't the tool for them. And it's not the child's fault. It's not the person's fault. It's not the teacher's fault. It's the tool's fault. The tool is the wrong tool. And
Mm-hmm.
when we start to recognize it is not one size fits all, we will continue then this journey of innovation. And if you don't get seen by a driver, it's not your fault. It's the tool's fault. Let's innovate and make it
Yeah.
more visible. I couldn't agree more. There is a need to recognize, stop placing the blame on the people and really look at the tool and see if that's the problem, which in this case it is.
And I think that's the power. Like, we're innovating that stick to be more than just a stick. Because you can do the same technique with a rod, a wood rod, or a metal tube.
Yes,
Like, you can do all that with that. But is that really giving you the safety besides yourself, the safety? Is it really giving the safety to the others around you? And I'll never forget this story. Um, of talking to one of my old students. He was completely blind, And he goes, I know where the bathroom is. I'll just walk there without my cane. I said, you're taking a major liability not knowing if somebody's sitting on the floor waiting for the classroom to be open. And you don't, and if you severely hurt that person because you didn't use your cane, are you what are you liable for? And that's something that I think we also need to be aware of. And I think this is why the white cane law, in effect, protects injury for visually impaired, among others, when you're using the proper tool. And I think the other thing that I would like to bring up in this conversation, currently the law currently said it's a white cane with a red bottom, and it doesn't say pink cheetah print, zebra print. Like, it doesn't say that. So that's where we don't. I mean, Grace, I don't know if you know anybody or any legal suits that have been happening on that definition of the white cane because of the way the law is written. It's
But
written.
tell me, Kel, why do we need a separate law from
Well,
the pedestrian has the right of way law? Because I agree with you. I think it gets to the problem of this particular law. It's too narrow.
mhm,
And what happens if your cane breaks and you still have to get home?
yeah,
Right? It's life is tough, and pedestrians have the right of way, and that should be enough. And I don't know what gets a person out to walk down the hallway that could trip over someone. And I agree with you, but I don't know that I should sue them for not using their white cane. If in fact they hurt me, and that's, somehow that needs to be a lawsuit, I think it's sufficient. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe they need that thing to say they should have been using their white cane. They whatever the reason,
mhm,
it could be brought in that I don't know. There's a law about using the cane in the hallway. Is what I'm saying.
yeah,
It's only about crossing and pedestrians and motorists. So I really think you're right. You've hit upon something here, which is that law is the impetus for the white cane day, and it is suspect in terms of its need. And it also says that many states still have that you should flag your white cane to alert to the driver, which is not a skill we like because what happens if someone is in front of you and you just decapitated them or gave them a black eye? I don't know what you're doing with that cane.
yeah,
You can't be flailing your cane up and down
yeah.
like that. I'm sorry. We do not
Well,
recommend that as a strategy.
well, that's a really good point. And as we wrap this up, is we need to start looking at the cane as one tool to a bigger solution. Our end goal is to give independence to the visually impaired and to give that independence. So I think as we need more blind individuals to innovate the cane to different levels, we need more people to create cane. And I don't know, technology is the way to go with the canes. I personally, there's a lot of risks involved when you use technology and you're relying on artificial information.
I say as soon as a seatbelt is a ding and not a strap, that's when we can change out of white canes to dings.
All right,
So if you
great.
have any letter to write him to Kel. It's all his fault.
Well, we're sending everything to info@safetitles.org. So, hey, if you want letters, I don't check on emails. So that wraps us up for the day. Just kind of an update with everybody. We're going to be going to a once a month podcast moving forward, just because I'm coming out with my own podcast, the Perseverance podcast, this next month, and there's just a lot of things happening with the See Me cane, with the belt cane, just so much. And so we realized that we really want to provide you valuable content as a mother, as a dad, as a preschool teacher, that you are getting the right content for your needs. And if you are really have a question or worried about something about your child, your student that is visually impaired, that is blind, whatever the definition you want to use, that has a visual challenge, email us at info@safetitles.org. Because then I can go ahead and pull up an episode for you specifically, and we can answer a series of different questions on your behalf. So again, email us at info@safetitles.org. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
That's
And
right.
then we have our blog on safetitles.org. Is that correct? Great.
That's correct.
And that also will get you a lot of helpful information. And we have our YouTube that has lots of helpful information as well, different videos, how children are really overcoming that challenge. And it's all there for you as well. This podcast is for you. It's not for us. It's for you. And we want to help you live through the challenge of being a parent, as a teacher, working with a child that has a visual impairment. And we want you to be able to help that child live beyond their challenges. Thank you guys. And you guys have a good one.
Thank you. Happy Safe Mobility Day. Safe Tuttles podcast is made possible by generous donations from people like you. Safe Tuttles' mission is to provide toddlers and preschoolers who are blind or mobility visually impaired with a solution for walking safely. A pediatric bell cane for clear path detection.